Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of GeekVerse Podcast. I am, because he's the chief, Taylor Field.
I am the Adam Hart caster, Dylan Muss.
And we are continuing on with episode 6, the spoilers review of the Halo show. But before we get to that, a couple of plugs. You can find us with your internet connection in the search bar. GeekVerse.ca is our home base. GeekVerseCast is our Twitter. GeekVerse on our Facebook. And be sure to check us out on our Patreon because you can get ad-free, exclusive early episodes there. It's definitely a good time. What do we got cooking, Dylan? You had me working some thumbnails for you. There's some good stuff in the works here.
Yeah, after being last minute on the thumbnail last week, I've been trying to get in there a little bit early so you can get prepared and do them nice and early if you want to. But there's a lot cooking. Me and Kirklin did a fun episode of Side Quest this week, talking about a few things, and then next week going to be reviewing Nintendo Switch Sports. And then also an Elden Ring bonus episode, like a full-on spoiler discussion. So I don't know what day the Elden Ring episode is going to be up, but yeah, a lot going on in the gaming side of things. We also just found out that Xbox is doing their showcase at the mid-June there, so that's going to be very exciting. So yeah, that's what's going on over my end.
That'll be cool. Right on. I guess next week we're reviewing Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness. No movies out this week.
It just does not feel like next week. I don't know.
It doesn't. It feels like it still needs to be in the works. It's just time's flying by. We do have the Northman review that we put out. We also have... What else did we do? Gosh. We did Sonic. There's so many movies. Just go check out our feeds. There's so many movies to endure.
Yeah.
I will be doing a newscast after this with Travis. So yeah, that's something else we did. We did a newscast earlier this week with Jessica and our Midnight reviews. So there's something for everyone, that's for sure. But let's get into it. Let's get in. So how did you feel non-spoilers about this episode, Dylan?
Yeah, what are we on episode? Is this episode 6 now, or is it 5? It was 6, right?
It's episode 6, yeah.
So we're past halfway at this point. Yeah, I figured I know that they get a budget for the whole show, right? And it's not that each episode is balanced in any way, but I felt okay, after last week, a lot of action, tons of set pieces, you could smell the budget. I figured this week would be much more low key, and it was that. It was another kind of slightly shorter episode, and I feel like it was all story stuff, which I liked. And I feel like there was no minute wasted in this episode, and I think I'm happy to say that. I didn't feel like there was any storylines that were just setting up for a future episode, or a couple storylines we're not a big fan of didn't get any screen time this episode. So I felt like it was just a bunch of story stuff and kind of fallout from what happened last week. And I gotta be honest, I really liked all of it. So I think for 2 weeks in a row here, I think they're on a bit of a hot streak. So what do you think?
It was definitely on the upper end of the spectrum for me. It's definitely, for me, not as great and granular as last week's episode, but as far as story goes, some of these characters are definitely the saving grace for what we got in terms of progression and narrative, and I'm happy and thankful for that. But I feel like they just backtracked again on so many other things, and I'm trying not to bridge that comparison, but I can't help it. I'm a filthy Halo casual fan, so that's what I'm gonna do. But
are you a filthy casual? I feel like you're a pretty hardcore fan.
Maybe
I feel like if you read the Halo books, you are no longer a casual. I think that bridges the gap.
Fair enough.
And I guess therefore then Kirklin's now a hardcore fan, but so maybe there is something else delineating it, but
it's just proving to be this love-hate relationship with what we're getting, and I'm still holding my breath for what we see. Thankfully, specifically one character is completely 180'd for me in terms of what I've how I felt at the beginning of the show to where I feel now about this character, and I'm really happy about that. And then other characters continue to just keep on growing in a way that I really am appreciating and enjoying with this show. But all in all, it's still struggling, I feel like, at the best of times for me with trying to execute certain things. And I can't wait to talk about it in spoilers, because there was one moment that had my breath completely just gasping, and not in a good way. I was actually scared of what was going to happen in the scene.
I'm curious what that is.
It was rough. So yeah, I think that's all I got. The score continues to be pretty good.
Yeah, there's a particular moment that I'll bring up, but it really, really kind of nailed it.
Yeah. Do you have anything else non-spoilers, or should we have?
Yeah, I feel like this episode, like I said, was just so much story progression without much fluff or action scenes and stuff. So I feel like there's not much to break down in the non-spoiler section. So I think I'm ready to push forward here.
Push forward. Okay. Then 3, 2, 1. We're getting into spoilers. Where do you want to start, Dylan?
Well, I thought about it a few more seconds, and I think I know what moment you're talking about that had you gasping for air. But which moment was that? Perhaps related to Halsey in a certain room.
No, it didn't relate to Halsey in a certain room.
Oh, okay,
room.
Not that section. Okay,
No,
what was it then?
But now I'm curious what you were referring to, which part. But this was when Chief was getting his like dopamine fix off of the artifact, and he was transported to the ring. And you see, I can't remember her name, but the
McKee, she said her name was.
McKee.
I think that she just made that up. I'm guessing for the
That's
people.
what I thought.
But I feel like because I don't know, she has some crazy Covenant name. I'm sure
the Blessed One or something like that. So
yeah.
Somehow she was in on this whole transcendence and appeared on the ring with him, and they walk to each other. She looks like she's like orgasming out of like absolute pleasure in this scene. She really does. She sees Chief, and then Chief walks towards her, and Chief like caresses her face like, what the fuck is going on? This is not good. And I thought, oh my god, are they just gonna go in and kiss and like make Halo ring love on the floor here? Because apparently anything goes. I was so terrified. How'd you feel about that?
Yeah, well, that's what I was gonna come into this episode asking you about, was the relation between these two characters, because we get a few scenes of them. Like obviously she just showed up, and that was like the big cliffhanger of last week, is like, okay, she's kind of infiltrated their forces. And I honestly really liked all their scenes together, barring maybe that last one. I'm kind of confused, but before that, I like it because I felt like she was going to be, I didn't think she would be helping them at all. Like I figured she would just be kind of this refugee, and she would use that to kind of try and sneak in and do some stuff from behind the scenes. But instead, she's actually sharing a lot of information, and I think a lot of it is bullshit. But she still is sharing like some valuable information with them and being truthful in certain ways. And the dynamic between those two was really interesting, because that's like the main reason she was trying to get into their base, is to talk to him and share whatever connection they have together. But that's my biggest question, is what is this connection? Because they're talking about this genetic code and how they are almost similar genetically. And then what was the other part? Like when they came out of that sequence, that their heart rate was the exact same. So like biologically, they got a lot going on in common. So what is that about? Like, is she that clone that was created of him that was supposed to die when he was a kid? Or like, that doesn't seem to make sense to me. Like, why would they change him from a boy to a girl at a young age? So what's going on? What is your theory with that character at this point?
I don't think that it's anything to do with the clone, because I definitely do feel like they adhere to that storyline. I'm glad they reiterated that, like the clones eventually would develop symptoms and they would die.
But if he is a special anomaly person, right? Like he's like the one person, he was the chosen one, right? Maybe, like, does that give that clone immunity to that, perhaps?
I wouldn't say well.
Okay.
God, I mean, you actually make a point. I mean, it totally could. But
yeah, it could just be the classic chosen one, like plot armor thing. But then again, it still doesn't make sense why she's a woman like that. That just, and we saw her backstory too, right? So that also doesn't make sense.
Yeah, no, I don't think they'll go that route. I do think, like, again, technically speaking, in Halo, all humans are supposed to be able to activate Forerunner artifacts. There were no such thing as like specific blessed ones.
Oh, okay.
And that's showcased in like the storyline of the game, because you see several people activating these artifacts. So
I see.
They kind of hone that in, I think, to add more emphasis on, because he's the Master Chief kind of narrative. So, which is fine if they want to do that. I just think that, okay, there's probably a lot more people out there that can actually activate these things without them knowing.
So you think there's more out there than just them too?
There's definitely more out there, yeah. And I would say that again because that prisoner guy who, you know, he made a comeback in this episode through some PTSD, but he was talking about how there are people that can activate these things, and that's what the Covenant's interested in. For some reason, the Covenant has only found the one, and the Covenant seems to have these tracking modules that lead them to these specific people. But sure.
So do you think there's other people out there then that shared these same genetics? I guess they're not like an exact clone. I watched that scene a couple times just like to figure out exactly what they said, because like they're not an exact replica of each other. Obviously, like physically, they're very very different, but they have a lot of similarities. So do you think there's other people out? Like, is it that everyone who can interact with the artifacts are going to share these genetic things, these genetic similarities?
The genetic similarities are interesting, but it makes sense, and it's in line because you have, is as per Halo 4, I think it is, a forerunner called the Librarian seeded parts inside, or seeded things inside humanity's genetic makeup to allow them to evolve faster and to progress faster technologically, basically allowing Halsey to get to this point in human evolution with her creations, and then seeding, I guess, humanity with the ability to use Forerunner tech. That's how I interpret it. So this does pull similarities in that sense. And again, this episode just felt like someone watched cutscenes from Halo 4 and just thought, we're gonna throw this into the origin story of the Halo series.
that seems untimely then.
Very much so. And I defer to, again, her being interrogated, I guess you could say, by Oni or UNSC, and just kind of like reallocating her and her resources. I just feel like, again, this is a scene that we didn't see until we got to Halo 4, and just so much of that stuff.
That's interesting. But I mean, I guess in general, taking out that kind of hologram scene or the dream sequence scene, I mean, it had that kind of dream sequence yellowy filter that we're used to in movies. So that's why I took it as that. Obviously, they didn't physically teleport there, but their consciousness in this did in some way. Like, what did you think of their scenes together where they're just kind of in her cell talking and stuff?
I didn't mind it. I just didn't like when Chief would have like a heart attack and collapse on the ground and show weakness when he's around her. I feel like if you are who you are, the Master Chief, and you're a professional interrogator and all this stuff, you have a possible high value target who is here from the Covenant, and you need to learn everything you can from her. And you don't show weakness to someone that you just met, right? Especially in this instance. And that's why I think it's not in
I
line
do
with his
feel like that
character.
she got in his head, like very specifically, really. Because he's kind of having this inner turmoil right now, which kind of culminated last episode when he got some info from Halsey, but he didn't really have any time to digest that information because he had to continue on with the mission and the battle at hand. So, like, really, when we pick up in this episode, it's like directly after that. So I feel like he's still kind of dealing with the fallout of what he's just learned, and then she immediately kind of pokes him with more information that kind of digs into it. So I can see, plus he's like still kind of getting used to the whole having emotions thing, and I feel like that can throw him, like when he kind of smashed the wall and then had this weird like he like almost shut down partially, like he rebooted, get that Microsoft reboot sound again. Like I feel like he kind of lost some control there, but I was almost concerned for him. Like, obviously I know he's not going to die in this show, or at least not now in season 1 or on episode 6 of season 1. But I was like, man, when he fell over in that point of weakness and she has that energy sword finger, like she could have just killed him if she wanted to. And it's very risky for them to just have this kind of freedom with her, where obviously they're not treating her like a prisoner. They're keeping her in this room, but they're not shackling her up or anything like that. Like they're just trying to make sure they know what's going on before they let her free. But I still feel like they're letting people in there, and when she could be potentially quite dangerous. So they are being quite risky, and especially with Chief. Just kind of, I mean, he is the Chief, so he's supposed to be badass and he could handle it, I guess. But I don't know. Even when he fell to his fell to his knees, you would think someone on the camera would be watching in that room to make sure he's okay or something.
Well, that's just it. Someone should have had some kind of monitor on what is going on with him. And I get Cortana is that system. And I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, what's anyone going to do? No one's going to be able to stop him and detain him and say, hey, you need to get a physical examination right now.
Yeah. But in general, I really like the scenes between them. And I honestly feel like this episode was the best display of Pablo's acting. Like, I feel like he got to do the most in this episode, and it worked for me. And sometimes some of the previous emotional sequences he's had in this show, to me, have felt a little cheesy, which to an extent are understandable, right? Because once again, he's like not had these emotions for years, and he's just kind of discovering this whole new world. But I thought the sequences between them were really good, and in general, there's other scenes in this episode too that I just felt like his acting was really on point. So I think I felt the most connected to him in this episode than I have before, and definitely due in part to her character. And I also like that they didn't really mention this. It was just kind of hinted at, but when Chief was hearing her backstory, I don't think he was in the room, but she was just talking, and maybe he was like listening on the watching the whatever the video, and she talked about how she was like kidnapped as a kid, and just like the reactions he had on his face to that, I liked because it kind of brought another point of similarity between them, where he's going through this, where he feels like he just kind of found out that he was kidnapped as a kid and his whole life is a lie, and hearing that her situation was the same, even if it's not the same, but the way she's kind of pitching it to him sounds the same, so they kind of have this thing in common. So I really liked that part of their connection too in their scenes.
Mm-hmm. You make a very good point about that, actually, that parallel dynamic between both sides of the spectrum.
Yeah, it was just a little thing on his face. The way he reacted to that, I felt like the way he was acknowledging it was cool. So I liked that nod.
That worries me more, that they'll develop a romantic relationship. That scene really made me
I know
now.
It would seem so forced, and yeah, we didn't get enough at the end of this episode to to tell if that's the route it's going. But I mean, that hand on the cheek, and she acts as if she's never been touched by another human, which is very possible. But like the way she just like flinched, like when he touched her cheek. So I don't know if that was something weird with like the halo energy and the hologram vibes were making them feel weird, and their heart rates were all fucked up. So we'll see what happens with that. But that definitely could go down a sour route, and at this point, I'm not concerned necessarily, but I don't know. We'll see what happens there.
Yeah. We're just going to jump to a quick ad break, and we will be right back. And we're back. So, do you have any other specific area you want to tackle?
Well, I'll just say, you mentioned it very briefly, but having that kind of crazy guy back from that asteroid planet, just for the brief, I just for how much we talked about that between me, you, and Kirklin, I thought it was funny that he kind of got a little flashback to see him again. Did not expect to see that character. We talked about that, right? We're like, do you think we'll see him again?
Yeah.
I guess this kind of counts, kind of not counts. But I guess maybe the other big storyline is then the kind of Halsey stuff that happens in this episode. So this is what I thought you were talking about when you were gasping for air, is when he locks her in that room and then like turns on the jets that are gonna, I guess, kill her. I didn't understand exactly what the purpose of that room was, but anyway, it was gonna take her out, and he like keeps it as close to the line as possible. And I really liked that scene. I mean, there was a tension there. I knew he wasn't going to kill her because they're building up Halsey as this big villain. If she just died there, that would have been kind of anticlimactic. But I really liked that he was pushing the limits to find out what Cortana, like how much power she had over him. And obviously he's so mad at Halsey. But man, there's like that scene after that too, like him and Halsey are just chatting in that room again. I feel like at that point, if I'm Halsey, I want to be nowhere near this guy. The last 2 times I've seen him, he tried to kill me. And the next time she's like, yeah, come sit down. Let's have a conversation. So clearly she still trusts him to some degree. But that scene was pretty intense. I thought it was well shot, had some good tension to it, even if we knew that she wasn't actually going to die there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't mind this scene, but I didn't necessarily need it, I guess. So
that's fair.
It's again not very in line with my perception of Master Chief, and I get everyone else has different perceptions of how this would be handled. And if you're new to this show, I get it. He's emotionally compromised and he's off his rocker doing his own thing. I just don't know why I can't even say that, because I get why you would. He's angry about his past being robbed from him. But I guess more in line with my perception is he had an upbringing where he was more so indoctrinated, and it wasn't necessarily against his will. He was made aware of these things. He understood them, but it never rattled where he stood. He stood as a soldier. He was proud to be a soldier, and he understood that his duty was to protect humanity, whatever the cost. That wasn't something that was cemented in him with a pellet in his back or anything like that. So just seeing this different dynamic is interesting. And I think as far as it goes of them displaying this sense of anger and aggression and emotion coming from this character who's supposed to be a brick wall, this scene was definitely on the higher end of it being executed well, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
So I'll definitely give them that. And you're right, I didn't for a second believe Halsey was going to get like baked in that room or anything, but it was definitely a heightened moment. And I did get a kick out of him talking out loud about how the guy that created all this futuristic tech basically had one failsafe that he wasn't able to pull off in the system. I got a kick out of that. So yeah,
that was cool. Yeah, I guess for me, like, I definitely have less less of a connection in terms of like who exactly Master Chief's character is, because I've always just kind of played the Halo games for the gameplay more so, and I understand how you're not necessarily vibing with that part. But I will just say, like, just in general, I really like the like raging bull John. Like, I just find those scenes really fun when he's really angry and doing some stuff when he's just super unhinged. So I mean, outside of like how the story implications and whatnot, I just find those sequences fun and funny at the same time, even if maybe I shouldn't feel that, but it's like a good fun. Like I just kind of enjoy him getting to do some intense acting for a few minutes there.
Some of the scenes with Pablo still just rub me the wrong way.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like I got nothing against the guy, but when I see his face, it angers me sometimes. I get as angry as Angry Chief does in these episodes.
I know where you're coming from. I think I'm like kind of warmed up to him at this point. I feel like episode 6, like I'm kind of there, and while he's not my favorite character I've ever seen on TV, I'm just having fun with him. I think he's doing a decent job for what this show is, even if it is a different direction than the Halo material from the games or the books rather. So
his comrade, the other Spartan, Kai, that was a brutal scene. Obviously, the episode starts where they're the fallout of the battle from the previous episode, and just when she's strapped on that bench, and they're just like needle after needle after needle, just like jabbing her up, trying to like calm her pain. It's like, oh, this is brutal. She's screaming in agony, and again, that kind of a moment where Chief is kind of. He's just dulled everything out until her hand grabs his, and he's just kind of coming to terms with everything. And Cortana's like, "Hey, you're not doing good."
Yeah, I like that sequence. She didn't have much story in this episode after that point. Like I feel like she's still kind of in recovery mode, but she did find out about what happened with them, and it sounds like maybe next episode or soon is when she's gonna share that information with the other members of Silver Team and get their reactions, which might not be as intense as hers, obviously, because they have the emotion chips still in them. But I don't know. I don't know if there's too much going on with her, but I agree that scene was very brutal.
How did you feel about the dynamic when she kind of got back on her feet there, and she was still limping and obviously really hurt, but she went in to see the rest of Silver Team and like threw her grenade, and then she was gonna say something but just felt kind of exiled from the two of them?
Yeah, I don't think I have too much to dig in. I mean, I personally like that scene. Just seeing all the Halo weapons is fun for me, and seeing the Spartan laser hologram was cool. Like, do you think it's gonna like? Was that like schematics for them to build it? Because we haven't seen any of those in person yet. I don't think, or maybe we have in the background. I don't think I've noticed it until this episode, though.
I haven't noticed it. I'm sure it's like maybe like
kind of foreshadow, right?
And foreshadow. There's definitely a scene where Chief uses it.
I'm excited, and I think even like the one. I can't remember the redheaded Silver Team member's name, but I think she said something about like the power threshold only allows you to take 5 shots or something like that. So funny, last episode I was talking about how the sniper rifle is not game accurate, but like that part is, I think, right? It's like you have 100% charge and each shot does 20% in the games, right? So I like that they're someone played the games. I know that whatever the director said he didn't want to play the games, but someone did.
Yeah, that's very true.
Let's see. What else is there? I guess, I mean, continuing with some of the Halsey stuff. So, I mean, the big thing for her this episode is that she, from the higher up, that I can never remember that character's name, but kind of do some shakeups with the power, and she gets removed from her post, and she's going to be sent somewhere. But she's essentially I guess she's still allowed to do her research, but she's taken off the Spartan mission, whatever you want to call that. So what'd you think about, did you kind of see this coming from your game knowledge stuff, or is this a divergent storyline?
Well, again, with those main 3 games, you don't really get much Halsey stuff, but with Reach, you get a lot more. And then they dive more into Halsey after Halo 4 and onwards. So again, my kind of association was the interrogation scene, why she had to justify her creation of the Spartans. That was heavily focused on in bits of Halo 4. And then her reallocation, I was trying to dig through my mental archives and memory of where that was kind of pulled from. And even in some of the books, she was kind of on the back end at times, and I don't recall her being reallocated somewhere else after this. But again, I'm not hating that. I think like I think it probably exists, and I'm just forgetting about it somewhere in one of these books, because it is in line with what's going on. They definitely did not like her with what she was doing. She put herself on a higher pedestal than everyone else in her work. And I think that's, again, one of the great things about this episode and this show so far is especially the actress playing Catherine Halsey. Really like that dynamic. So she's gone, but she's not gone without a couple tricks up her sleeve. She's bringing the little boy toy creeper with her. And
yeah, I found that part weird. Like, she's kind of pseudo locked up, but then that guy is still just hanging out with her and doing stuff. And he presumably... Weird. Well, do you think he's getting kicked out too because he's so close to her? Or was he just there hanging out? Because that would seem to me like a big issue if you're trying to keep her locked up away from doing anything mischievous, but that guy can come and go. Like, isn't that maybe giving her a bit too much rope?
It might be. I took it, though, as he would go, and the only thing that wouldn't go would be Cortana. Like, Cortana would be the thing that stays behind. Because, as far as the rope goes, she seems to have a very long one.
Yeah.
Especially as she baited her daughter. I really, really liked that scene. And then when she turned it around and she actually was scanning her eyes or doing whatever with her contact lens, I thought, oh my God, this feels like a Halsey move. And this is just such a sinister thing for a mom to do.
Yeah, I mean, I figured as soon as Miranda entered that room that Halsey was... definitely had an ulterior motive. She wasn't there to say bye to her daughter, and she very quickly dropped that facade anyway. But I was kind of confused. Like, I understand the implications of what happened, but like, what was going on with the eye? Did she plant something on her? I didn't really understand the logistics of what she actually did.
I took it as it allowed possibly access to get into the lab to some degree, but then I don't remember Miranda using any eye lens things to get into the lab.
Yeah, I don't know. Someone in the comments, please help us out with that. I don't understand what we were seeing there. Although, yeah, like I said, obviously she got in. She got the codes, she could hack into the software and I guess has access to Cortana again. Or I guess once you have access to Cortana, you have access to everything else, pretty much.
I would think so, yeah. Yeah.
But it's weird because we never really saw Cortana in hologram form. I guess, was the hologram part of it like only tied to Chief? Well, or can the hologram pop up anywhere?
I don't know how it works. Like, I really don't, because like
I feel like they hinted at the little like coaster thingy, right? Because in I don't know, in the games it's like a little coaster that she kind of the hologram pops out. Because I feel like they showed the camera going past one of those, but then like she didn't pop out of there. But maybe they're working on it, so I don't know if that's what it's like building towards. But that was kind of what I was expecting.
I would hope they build towards it, because there's one moment where Chief walks in through to a room. The doors close behind him, and she's still a hologram there. I don't know how this technology works. It's complete magic. So
yeah, it doesn't really have much place in the real world. I'm curious to see where Halsey goes from here. Like, are they actually going to send her off somewhere, and is she going to be cut off? I mean, she has her Cortana access, obviously, or are they just going to keep her in this random room, and now for the rest of the show, she's just going to be doing the same old thing, but in this room?
It sounded like they were going to ship her off. And within line in the games, if they do ship her off, it happened at a different point in the games, because in Halo Reach, when the Covenant attacked Reach with their Armada, she was still there, and she managed to escape via another Spartan that saved her. So we haven't seen Reach fall yet, and I imagine that's going to happen. Maybe at the end of the show, I think we'll probably see the fall of Reach and the Covenant attack. So I doubt we'll see Halsey leave the planet before then. I have a hunch that they're going to keep her around, and then the Covenant attack, and then they'll kind of escape her.
Yeah.
She'll escape.
That's fair. And I guess so the other thing for me is when that higher up reallocated her to another division, I almost felt like she truly was just like firing her or just gonna like put her in a prison, and she just like said what she said of like, you can still do your research but you're going to this other place, almost as like a Miranda rights thing. Like, she just had to say that, like, and that was on record, but truthfully, like, she's actually gonna just keep her locked up somewhere. So yeah, it's hard to know what's gonna do you think that's a next episode thing, or is she gonna be in that room for a couple episodes? Like, what's your vibe on that?
This probably will segue to our next topic. My vibe is the next episode is going to be full on Quan Ha and Soren out the wazoo, and we're not going to see Halsey. And then we'll get, because I think there's 9 episodes, and we just did 6. So 7 will be like a Soren, Quan Ha one. 8 will have Halsey back. Maybe not too much, but in the room. But I think it'll be more focused on the invasion of Reach and them coming to grab the Covenant, grabbing their girl, getting the artifact, and Chief kind of dealing with things. And then, finale in episode 9. So,
whoa, laid it all out. There you go.
That's my hunch.
I don't even need to watch the rest. Yeah, I'm curious. So yeah, I guess, as you said, Quan, we see her for 2 seconds in this episode, and it's not even the real her. It's just like Chief having a. I don't even know. Like, did he actually see her? Was he just thinking about her? Like, is he that unhinged that he's like now seeing people? Like, I know Cortana can pop up. Maybe it was Cortana in disguise. She popped up.
Oh yeah.
But she had the blood on her face again. Quan did. So. Yeah, but that was it. Like, we didn't actually get anything from her and Soren, which, as we talked about last week, that was just a major drag in the episode and would have made like what was otherwise almost a perfect episode. Perfect is a strong word, but a very good episode, like weaker because of that. So I was wondering like, what is going to go on with that storyline? Are we ever going to get that episode dedicated to it? So do you think it's going to be? You're saying that there's like maybe you're going to dedicate a larger chunk of the episode to Quan and Soren's storyline. Is Chief gonna go and meet up with them and assist with this mission, or is it for the rest of the show like just them doing their own things? I have to imagine at some point there's a Quan and John reunion, but I don't know if that would necessarily be next episode. Like that could be something in the final episode. I don't know.
Well, it's funny you say that because I genuinely don't see a way or a route for their paths to cross again. They have no reason to at this point.
It doesn't make sense how that could happen, yeah.
No. So, again, I understand that we have the insurrectionists and that one creepy leader guy from the pen, top-down shot of him wading through his bathtub, but I just don't see how the paths realign. And that's where my only hesitation to cement my prediction of where the episodes are going to go with the invasion of Reach, because we have to have some kind of resolution to what is going on with Quan Ha on Madrigal with Soren. Like what is happening with Soren's body? He's technically unconscious in the sand somewhere.
Right.
So where's that going to lead? What's going to come out of that? There's just nothing to connect Chief's story.
Now I'm picturing that just for like the entire day or two that this episode takes place, that he's just lying there in the sand, like knocked out, and maybe some worms are coming to like nibble at his toes or something like that. What else? So I guess the other part of that Halsey getting reallocated is that Miranda takes her place.
Yes.
And so we talked about the Halsey side of it. Oh, she's kind of manipulated her and got some power back, but I thought this was a good moment for Miranda. I felt like they built up to it in a good way. I don't know if it's a 180 from what we saw last episode of her dad like just cutting her off from doing what she wanted to do, and then immediately in this episode we're gonna like kind of go back on that and she gets power of this. So what do you think that's gonna lead to? Because obviously there's been a lot of screen time between Miranda and Kai and building up that relationship, and a little bit in this episode of Miranda and Chief. But we haven't seen too much of like those two interacting with each other. But do you think that's going to be like a big team up? I know you've said that in the games Miranda is a bigger part. Is that maybe something we're kind of heading towards? Is her being like a good person in charge of the Chief or the Spartan, whatever it's called?
Yeah, I'm excited to see where that goes. She was I believe she was a lieutenant in Halo 2, so she was like the captain of her own ship, essentially. Right. So she wasn't necessarily a science officer like she's being represented here, but I am really enjoying her character. I love the progression and development that she's had of getting her own lab and her kind of taking over more so of her mother's work. I'm digging it. The building of the relationship with Kai, I've always really loved that, and now she's building this kind of relationship with Master Chief, which I'm equally loving that as well. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes. She kind of immersed herself in that interview or interrogation with her mom in this episode.
Yeah.
And her dad was trying to like shut her out. And I get it. Her dad, Captain Keyes, is trying to hide what they did because there's all of these higher up people and that even in their council meeting that they did in this episode too, they're all trying to cover themselves and hide what they did. So yeah. I like that dynamic, and I like how they're trying to hide it from Miranda.
Yeah, and I thought the acting from her on, like once she found out, and then she kind of just stormed out of the room, and it's not like she immediately went to someone to talk about it and kind of deliberate. Like it was just a little acting piece of seeing her facial reactions as she kind of storms off. And then obviously
Just walks right into Chief.
yeah. And then she does get some good news like shortly after that when she's kind of been promoted. But I liked that sequence. I thought the interrogation part of it, I was kind of confused for like the first minute or whatever of that, where it's like two people in a room, but then like sometimes the other two people are there, and then obviously they show the kind of weird temple dials that let you kind of connect in there. I also thought it was weird that kind of like just the logistics of that was seemed a bit weird to me. Like Miranda just walks in that room, and then you can like hear it, but then she decides to like put the things on anyway so she can be in the room. I don't know. I don't know why she needed to put the little things on. Like it sounded like she could hear the whole conversation. So
It's, to me,
it was kind of weird the way it was shot.
A modern day, present day interrogation room seems eons ahead of what they were doing. Just even they had the technology. It just seems so redundant. You go into this room, lay down
why
in
do
a
you need
chair.
to be standing there as like a hologram ghost?
Yeah.
It's so weird.
Just put the one-sided mirror up and go stand there. Just weird, but sure, I'll allow it.
Mm-hmm. What else? There was another sequence where I think was this during the. I think it was after when Chief grabbed onto the artifact, and he was seeing like some visions, some we've seen before, and a couple new shots. And one was like he had this vision of essentially a room full of kids on surgical tables that were getting, I guess, the various augmentations implanted in them. And I thought that scene was brutal. Like, once again, this show does not hold back with just some nasty imagery in certain sequences, and that was quite visceral. Just how much work they put into the makeup of making these kids look seriously mutilated. It was pretty messed up. But they're all still alive, so their heads are like moving around. Oh, shivers, man.
Yeah, that's a dynamic that they explain in the book. And you just have to visually kind of piece together what the results would have been like. And my mind didn't really go to that extreme as what I got to see in that shot. And I don't want to say like, oh, I like seeing that scene because it was just really grotesque and brutal. But I like that they tackled such a part of the Spartan program's history. It's so dark, and I appreciate that they actually did it and implemented in here to add more of this history and backstory to what Halsey did and to the things that Chief had to go through, because it is brutal. There were so many, I think like over 100 of these Spartan 2s, and so many of them died. Like they did the training, they went through everything, and they made it to this last step, and that augmentation was the kicker, and so many of them died off after that. And again, we got to see a result of what Soren had, his arm that kind of got all messed up and everything. But yeah, it's a crazy piece of Halo history.
Yeah. And, I like that we got more of an explanation from Halsey's perspective. That's something I've been waiting for, is like what exactly her motivations are. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I still, like, she tries to justify it, and she still is just completely evil in the way she's going about justifying the ends to the means. But I like that we got more of that, and I feel pretty justified in like understanding where she's coming from now. And so I think that once again, they're just doing such a good job with that character. We kind of talked about it, but once again, like kind of seeing once again like these just absolutely disgusting scenes that she's just totally okay with and doesn't seem to bother her at all. Like she is a full-on psychopath. It is disturbing.
I'm gonna send this to a quick ad break,
Sure.
and then probably our last ad break actually, and we'll be right back. And we're back. So it looked like you had an idea of where you want to go next.
I really only have a couple more notes. Like I said, I feel like this episode was pretty succinct in that there was really two storylines, maybe three, that were progressing, and there wasn't really any fluff. There wasn't really any action. Like it was just pretty straightforward episode. But one of the things is we mentioned this in the non-spoilers part, but is the music of that sequence when they're actually on the Halo ring in that kind of weird hologram dream sequence. The music is kind of has like this serene, melancholy feel, like if you're just in this beautiful green meadow on this beautiful planet, which they are. But then the music is kind of glitching out, and it has these kind of sinister undertones almost. And I really like that. Plus, and there was like a little bit of the theme in there too, like just very distantly. So I thought that was great. And then the way that because that's like the end of the episode too. The way that faded into the credits, and then the credits took away that kind of creepy part of it and just kind of had this nice serene music. I thought that was a really cool transition and a good way to end the episode. And then, man, I feel like this is the first time that the episode ended and I was like, shit, I really want 10 more minutes. Like, I just really wanted to see, like, most of these episodes have ended with a cliffhanger to some extent, but this one really, like, I really wanted just a couple more minutes. And in like a good way, that like I really want to see what's going on between John and McKee at this point, because I need some fucking answers like yesterday on what is going on between them.
I'm still afraid they're just shacking it up on the Halo ring out there. Some Adam and Eve kind of stuff going on, but I do agree. I actually was wanting like another 10 minutes just to kind of see where we're going in this story.
We've 180'd from where we were like 3 episodes ago. Like, these are too long.
That's good. I'm glad that this show is actually accomplishing that. It was a little rocky to get there, but we're there nonetheless. So you're spot on again with the way the music played off in that sequence, and again the music with that little subtlety of the Halo theme, just how they did that shot of, you see like our background wallpaper right now, just the ring going up and just the clouds and how it descended the other side. I love that. It was just fantastic, and I got goosebumps because I'm thinking, holy shit, here's the Halo ring, the flood is on this ring, and that means we're gonna get the flood. I hope to God we're gonna get the flood. It's just gonna be absolutely fantastic. Just the doorway that's opened up with seeing the actual Halo ring now, it does have me as a fan super jazzed.
I love that. Yeah, I'm excited. I that's kind of the storyline I'm most curious about, is obviously McKee and John together, but also just like, what is her trajectory now for the rest of the show? You're talking about there's gonna be the fall of Reach when the Covenant come, and that'll be a way that she could kind of get, if she doesn't die, which she very well could, but if she doesn't and they just recover her and then she's back there, good to go, season 2, whatever it is. But yeah, like, what does she do? Because we have to imagine that's like a conclusion. That's the episode 9 kind of thing, is that big battle. So what does she do from now until then? Like, do you think that their relationship, I don't know. I just really want to know what's going to go on with her and John at this point.
I could see John making a ploy to try and save her when things like shit hits the fan.
Yeah.
I could also see her dying, because
she almost died here. Like, I thought she was dead for a second.
She almost did die.
Shocked. Yeah.
It is in line, in at least in comparison to the games, where the Covenant was just trying to get like whatever human they could just to kind of activate Forerunner artifacts, and if they lose her, then it would warrant them to go and progress. And maybe that's a dynamic they want to use, where the Covenant is trying to capture John and use John as their next Blessed One or something. I don't know, and anything could happen. But as far as what her trajectory is, oh yeah, she's either gonna die or she's gonna be kept in safe proximity from Master Chief, because I think this human attachment that he's developing now, like you said, is going to progress into something, because he sees the parallels there. Maybe they will use her as kind of like a martyr, basically, where if she dies, and he'll just, or maybe who knows, maybe the Covenant would shoot her or do something to her. I don't know, but I think whatever happens to her is going to cement his trajectory of where he's going, and I don't think he's going to go rogue again. So I'm imagining he's only going to go with the UNSC, which will result in some kind of more hatred against the Covenant, which would have to be her doing something to trigger that, I imagine, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Do you think that from her perspective, she's just going to be lying to John like the whole time and just making up this big elaborate lie to get what she and the Covenant wants? Or do you think that they actually are going to build a real bond where she's being genuine with him? Because I mean, it makes sense that he has so many questions for her now, so many more questions, especially after that sequence touching the artifact at the end of the episode. So do you think that she's going to just feed him bullshit, or are they going to like truly bond through this connection that they have, being these weird DNA twins?
I hope it's bullshit, specifically because I feel like if they gonna go too far down this path, she's just being the Cortana that we get in the games to Master Chief, and I don't want that. The female counterpart in this franchise is Cortana, with their relationship and their dynamic and just how they feel about each other. And when you have her, this Blessed One, come into play, it totally puts that to the back burner. With that whole moment that they shared, I feel like, okay, Cortana, who? Like, we're just getting this new character to fill in this void. Yeah.
Which interesting you bring that up, because Chief is very adamant. Like, it's come up multiple times now where he just really wants to get rid of Cortana. Like, he is not bonding with her in any way. And obviously he did that test earlier in the episode to find out how much power she truly had. But yeah, he's talking so serious about like trying to get her removed from his consciousness or disconnected, and she talks about how that will kill him and that he shouldn't do that. Whether or not that's true or not, she's just saying that to, manipulate him to not do anything about it and get used to her. But I mean, I just feel like based on the games that eventually they're going to bond and be on good terms, but that's not having any sort of upwards trajectory right now. If anything, it just like keeps going downwards at this point. After now, she's been in there for a couple episodes, and they have not bonded at all in that time.
Yeah, I have a hunch that they could keep the Blessed One around for season 2 and use her later and later. But I do think that, just to reiterate again, like something will happen with her and she's gonna pull a stunt, and Chief isn't gonna like that, and maybe they'll have Cortana there to kind of act as like a cushion to alleviate some of this anxiety he's feeling, and that's where they're gonna form their bond and start to hit it off. But we'll see.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much all of my notes for this episode.
Yeah, I think that's basically all I got. I am, like you said, 10 more minutes would have been great, and I am getting excited to see the progression of where we're getting. The Halo ring did that for me, and I just want to see where we're going next.
Yeah, I those last couple episodes have been super good, and so I'm kind of on a bit of a hot streak here too. I'm liking it.
Right on. Well, I think that concludes our episode 6 review. We'll definitely be back next week.
Maybe Kirklin will be with us again. Who knows?
Yeah, I think he will. I think he's extended leave of vacation right now. So, and I know
he can watch the episodes back to back, and then he doesn't have to wait for that 10 minutes. He'll have it right there.
He can watch them back to back. I pitched it to Travis again, and Travis is just like at work, so he's still. I said maybe come in for the finale. Maybe we'll do that one late so you can join in, but we'll see. So
I don't know if I see him watching 8 episodes of Halo to catch up for the finale. If he does, shout outs to him. But that's a lot of Halo for him.
That's a lot of Halo. Yeah. Well, thank you for tuning in, everybody, and we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.